Hello, Michigan. It's awesome to be back. For those of you that know me, hello again. I can't wait to talk to you again. For those who don't know me, I can't wait to meet you. So let's get right into my presentation today. For the last over 20 years, I've worked with heroes all over the world who help communities respond and recover from disasters, who help save lives and help rebuild communities. And I want to share with you a little bit of my observations about the disaster heroes that come through. And I'm going to share with you a couple of stories of new disaster heroes that I want to introduce you to and share their stories with you. But first, I want to show you this image. And for those of you who've been here before and have seen my presentation and this image, please don't guess. But for those of you who haven't seen this before, I'd like you to take a look at this image, and anybody who wants to shout out what they think this is and what they see in this image. What is this an image of? Does anybody know or recognize this? Yes? Right. It's Ground Zero, 9/11. Of course, for those of you who remember that incident. And what do you see in this picture? What kinds of things do you see in here? Very good. You see rescue workers. And some people will give us answers like we see smoke billowing out, we see terror, we see tragedy. But very good. You saw the rescue workers there. And that's something that we need to remind ourselves. Some of you might be familiar with Mr. Rogers. You're going to become more familiar with him as the new movie comes out starring Tom Hanks, who seems to portray a lot of heroes out there, Tom Hanks does. Anyway, Mr. Rogers said once when he was a little boy that when he would see bad and scary things in the news, he would run to his mother. And for comfort, she would say to him, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." And he said that would make him feel better when he would see bad images of devastation and disasters in the news. So when we put that image up again, now what do we see? For those of us who didn't see those helpers and heroes before, once we think and remind ourselves about that quote, now all of a sudden we don't just see smoke and devastation and death and destruction, but what do we see? We see the hundreds of heroes and helpers and workers behind the scenes who volunteered their time for 9 months to clean up that pile, to make sure that it was now the beautiful memorial site that it is today. And after seeing that, and every time we respond to disasters, I and a lot of our colleagues would notice how helpers and heroes really do shine brightest in darkness. And there are so many people out there, people who don't necessarily get paid for being disaster heroes, just everyday people like you and me, who go out and just think that something should be done, and they do the right thing after a disaster happens. And I'm going to share with you a couple of examples of these disaster heroes. And I want to also mention that I did write a book, and that's originally why I was invited here a few years ago, was to talk about some of these disaster heroes that I featured. Some who've saved lives, some that you'd never heard about before in the news, because they're everyday people that don't make the news. But fortunately, for people like us who work behind the scenes in disasters, we get to meet these amazing everyday people who do these amazing things for communities that you never get to hear about in the news. And what I decided to do was there were so many of these amazing stories that you don't hear about that I thought, well, I'm going to write a book about it. I used to be a journalist before I was in emergency management, so I'm going to combine those two skills, and I'm going to bring some of these stories to the public to let you all know what goes on behind the scenes and share with you some of the positive sides of disasters and what shines through. Now, I'm going to share with you these two new disaster heroes that I recently met and helped achieve a goal of theirs last month on how to be disaster heroes. So I'm going to talk to you a bit first about the gentleman in the baseball cap that you see there. His name is Sergeant Edwin Morales, and he's from New York City. Sergeant Edwin Morales lost his cousin, an FDNY firefighter, in the 9/11 terror attacks. What he wanted to do is to give back and do something positive to show and remember his cousin and how he lost his life in that terror attack. So about a month before the last 9/11 happened, about a month before that, I get a call from Edwin. I know Edwin and a lot of the 9/11 family members from the work that I've done since. And so I get a text from Sergeant Edwin Morales, and he says to me, "I had a dream yesterday, and I wanted to know if disaster heroes could help. Can you call me?" So I called him, and I said, "What's up?" And Edwin said, "I had a dream last night that I was carrying a big sign that said, "Remember 9/12." And I carried it, and I walked all the way from my home in Queens down to Ground Zero, carrying it. And my message was to let everybody know, yes, it's important that we remember 9/11 and people remember the tragedy and the terror and the destruction that happened. But it's also important that we remember 9/12 and what happened that day, where all of us came together. It didn't matter what political party we were affiliated with, what religion we were with, what country we were from, what city we were with. They all came together. For years, they supported each other. And Edwin said, and now we've lost that in this city. But I want to remind New Yorkers and the country how we can get that back. We all were united, and we can do that again, and it doesn't take a disaster, and it shouldn't take another 9/11 to do that. So I want to walk from Queens to Ground Zero. Will you walk with me? Will Disaster Heroes walk with me and cover that? And I said, sure. So we did that. So Sergeant Edwin Morales and I and a few other of his friends did that walk. And I'll show you a couple of pictures, and then I'm going to share with you the other gentleman that's in that picture, Chris Hopcraft. But first, I'll just show you pictures of the end of that. Sergeant Edmund Morales. You might recognize the gentleman that's in that emotional meeting with him. John Stewart, who's been fighting for the 9/11 recovery workers and coverage and to be recognized for what they've done and the injuries and illnesses that they're now going through. But that is a picture up there with Edwin and the flag at the end of his walk, where now that is us looking at the Statue of Liberty from Battery Park. And of course, you'll see at the back of the sweatshirt, it says, remember 9/12. So we were able to help Sergeant Edmund Morales reach his mission of completing that goal. And along the way, he thanked workers, transportation workers, security guards, sometimes those heroes that we forget to thank. We remember the first responders, but sometimes we forget all of the other workers and the people out there that need to be thanked. So that's what Edwin was doing, the whole 11-mile walk that we did on September 12th. And from now on, Edwin's goal is that was the first official walk of an annual walk now, that hopefully we'll have, let's say, maybe 35 people, or who knows how many next year, and so on and so on. And now I want to talk to you about the second hero that I had the opportunity to recently meet and work with in New York City as well. And it's a Michigan man named Chris Hopcraft. That's Chris up there. And so I think about a day after Edwin contacted me, I got a message from another 9/11 family member who I'm friends with, who said that she got a message from somebody, a man, who wanted to do something really special to thank the 9/11 recovery workers, the heroes, and the 9/11 family members, to give back to them. And I'll tell you what he did. So Chris Hopcraft started something called the World Trade Center Oak Project. 2 years ago, in 2017, Chris visited the World Trade Center Memorial at Ground Zero, and noticed there were a lot of acorns that have fallen from these memorial oak trees that are on the site of Ground Zero. And so he went back and he was thinking about those acorns, took the train back to Philadelphia, and it bothered him so much that he thought he wanted to go back. He went back the next day, took the train, picked up 60 of those acorns, brought them back here to Michigan, and decided that he was going to try to plant them and see if they took. And if any of these 9/11 memorial oaks took, he was going to bring them back to New York City and to deliver them to 9/11 family members, survivors, and heroes to be able to act as living memorials. Isn't that a beautiful, beautiful story? So Chris was reaching out, looking for people in New York that could help him complete his mission to get these oaks to these heroes and these families. And so he was having a tough time doing that, reaching out through official foundations. They reached out to Disaster Heroes, and we made it happen. And so we were able to arrange, through Chris, in partnership with Disaster Heroes and Friends of Firefighters, who's an organization, a wonderful organization in New York City that helps FDNY firefighters recover from PTSD, trauma, suicide prevention support as well. So the World Trade Center Memorial Oak Project partnered with us, and he delivered personally oak saplings to all of these different areas to our heroes and our survivors in New York City, all the way from Michigan. Here's some of the areas, or some of the places where the baby oaks ended up, all thanks to one local Michigan hero who just had an idea and thought to do something about it. And now I have a surprise for everybody. Chris Hopcraft is here today, and I want to call him up because we are now officially presenting one of those 9/11 memorial oak trees to the Hero Roundtable here that is going to be planted at Venture Church. So I would like to introduce Chris Hopcraft, the founder of the World Trade Center Oak Project, and if we could call up Scott Mixer from Hero Roundtable, as well as a representative from Venture Church. And I would like to now just pass on the mic quickly to Chris, if you could just officially present the oak.
Hi, everyone. Great to meet you. It's my honor to present this oak tree to the Hero Roundtable. It's been a long journey to actually get to this point, and it's really fantastic to be able to present this here today.
Thank you. So I'm from the, thank you guys. I'm from the Hero Roundtable here, and we travel all over, but Venture's agreed to nurture this tree throughout its life here on the property, and they are an awesome support for us here. So thank you, Mark, for having us and for taking on this tree for the next however many years.
Thanks. Well, thank you. And Chris, is really nice to meet you. We've been going back and forth through email, and we're really excited as a church to accept this and plan it. We've actually got a community fitness trail that we are doing a ribbon cutting as well as a tree planting on November 10th. So the timing of this is perfect. And our intent is that we'd love to have a ceremony annually on 9/11 for commemorating the first responders. So this works. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, thank you. All right, well, wasn't that great? Thanks, Chris. All right, and I'm going to end it here, but I want to remind everybody to think about who's your hero. I'm sure you all have special heroes that maybe you want featured. Just so you know, Disaster Heroes is not just a book, now it's a movement. It's turning into a podcast. For any of you who want to sign up, go to disasterheroes.com. You'll find out more about the upcoming podcast. If you know any heroes that you want featured or talked about, hit me up and let me know. And I would love to talk about them and feature them or interview them in a future podcast. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking to every one of you, and keep heroing on.